When my mother handed me a written list of 5 humiliating conditions just to be allowed to attend my own sister's wedding, she thought she had total control over my life. She and my sister laughed right in my face, completely convinced that I would bow down to their ridiculous demands just to feel included. But I simply smiled, rejected their behavior on the spot, and booked a luxury beach vacation to Malibu while mailing one final gift to the venue. As my sister opened that beautiful black box in front of hundreds of high society guests, her joyful smile turned into a scream of pure terror, and their entire fake world collapsed into absolute ruin. My name is Alicia Gibson. To understand the sheer scale of the trap my family walked into, you have to understand the toxic dynamic that defined my life for nearly 15 years. My mother, Victoria Gibson, was a cold, status-obsessed matriarch who viewed her children not as human beings, but as corporate accessories to fund and elevate her social standing. My younger sister, Savannah, was the undisputed golden child of the family, beautiful, manipulative, and completely shallow. From the time we were teenagers, Savannah was pampered like royalty, while I was treated like an unwanted servant whose only purpose was to work hard, pay the bills, and stay completely in the shadows. When our father passed away, he left his boutique digital security and private asset recovery firm to me, because I was the one who had spent years mastering the technical operations, while Savannah spent her days blowing through his money. My mother was furious about his decision. She completely cut me off emotionally, telling her wealthy social circle that I had manipulated my father into giving me a failing, low-grade office job, while Savannah was the true intellectual star of the family. I let them believe that lie. For 5 years, I kept the true explosive growth of my company a complete secret from them. Under my leadership, the firm transformed into an elite international corporate intelligence and debt acquisition powerhouse. I quietly bought out multi-million-dollar real estate portfolios and corporate debts across the state, while continuing to wear simple clothes and living in a modest apartment to keep my toxic family at a safe distance. The real trouble began 3 months ago when Savannah announced her engagement to a man named Preston Vance. According to my mother's nonstop bragging, Preston was an elite old-money billionaire whose family owned the prestigious Grand Ridge Manor, the most expensive, exclusive luxury estate in the entire region. My mother and sister were floating on a cloud of superficial pride, believing this marriage would permanently cement them into the highest tiers of high society. They began planning a massive multi-million-dollar wedding with hundreds of powerful corporate leaders, politicians, and media figures on the guest list. A week before the wedding, my mother called over to her sprawling suburban home. She didn't invite me to catch up or share a warm family moment. Instead, she sat across the marble kitchen island, slid a crisp white piece of paper toward me, and looked at me with cold, arrogant eyes. She told me flat out that before they would ever allow me to step foot into my sister's wedding, I had to agree to 5 strict rules. She started dictating them with a sickening smirk, explaining that first I was required to anonymously clear the remaining $45,000 luxury catering bill for the reception without my name appearing anywhere on the registry. Then, she casually informed me that I was completely banned from sitting at the main family table and would instead be placed in the back overflow row behind the technical videography crew so my drab presence wouldn't ruin the official wedding photos. She didn't stop there. She demanded that I sign a legal waiver permanently forfeiting my remaining shares of our late father's estate and transfer them directly to Savannah as a wedding gift. On top of that, I was expected to act as an unpaid background coordinator during the reception, managing the cleanup crew and running endless errands for Savannah's bridesmaids. Finally, she shoved a plain, uniform-like charcoal gray dress into my hands that I was strictly forced to wear, warning me that I was completely forbidden from speaking to any of the groom's high-profile investors. As my mother finished speaking, my sister, Savannah, walked into the kitchen wearing a diamond tiara and a smug, mocking smile. She told me that they just wanted everything to be perfect, and that since I didn't fit into Preston's elite world, I needed to know my place and pay my dues if I wanted to be a part of their family. They both stared at me, completely convinced that my deep desire for family acceptance would force me to bow down, sign the papers, and write the check. They truly believed they held all the power. But I didn't cry, I didn't scream, and I didn't try to argue. A wave of profound, icy clarity washed over my entire mind. I looked at the paper, then looked up at my mother and sister, a calm, knowing smile spreading across my face. I told them very smoothly that I declined every single one of their conditions and that they should enjoy their perfect wedding. My mother's face instantly twisted with pure, ugly rage as she screamed that if I walked out that door, I was officially dead to the family. I didn't say another word, turned around, and walked right out. The next morning, I began setting my counterattack into motion with the cold, systematic precision of an elite intelligence operative. I didn't act out of wild, chaotic anger. I used my firm's massive resources to dig deep into the groom's background. What my mother and sister didn't know was that Preston Vance and his family were complete frauds. They weren't old money billionaires at all. In fact, Preston's father had severely mismanaged their assets, and their primary estate, Grand Ridge Manor, was drowning in millions of dollars of toxic defaulted debt. To maintain their fake image of luxury, Preston had been running a massive corporate embezzlement scheme, stealing funds from a prominent national charity organization to pay for this multi-million-dollar wedding. And here was the absolute masterpiece of poetic justice. My private asset recovery firm, Vanguard Intelligence, had spent the last 2 months quietly buying up the defaulted multi-million-dollar mortgages of Grand Ridge Manor. Just 48 hours before the wedding, the acquisition went through. I was now the official, primary institutional lien holder and legal owner of the very luxury estate where the wedding was taking place. Furthermore, our corporate intelligence branch had uncovered the definitive bank records proving Preston's multi-million-dollar embezzlement fraud. Instead of stopping the wedding early, I decided to let them have their grand moment. I wanted them to climb to the absolute highest peak of their superficial pride before the floor completely vanished beneath their feet. I calmly packed my designer luggage into the trunk of my fully electric Tesla, driving out of the city and stopping at a local gas station to fill up the fuel tank before heading straight to the airport for my flight to Malibu. I checked into a stunning, 5-star luxury beachfront resort overlooking the ocean, ordered a chilled glass of champagne, and pulled out my laptop to coordinate the final delivery. I hired a high-end private courier service to deliver a sleek, beautifully wrapped matte black gift box directly to the main stage of the wedding reception, with explicit legal instructions that it must be opened by the bride in front of the entire audience during the main speeches. The night of the wedding arrived, and I tracked the entire event through the public social media stories of my mother's wealthy friends. The Grand Ridge Manor ballroom was absolutely breathtaking, filled with sparkling crystal chandeliers, towering floral arrangements, and hundreds of elite guests dressed in black tie attire. My mother was seen in multiple videos, laughing loudly, drinking expensive wine, and proudly telling a group of corporate executives that her daughter had married into a legacy of unshakable wealth. Savannah looked radiant in her custom designer gown, standing next to Preston, soaking in the collective worship of the crowd. They were completely convinced that they had won, and that I was sitting alone in my apartment, crying over my exclusion. The absolute climax of their reckoning arrived at exactly 9 p.m. during the reception speeches. The master of ceremonies announced that a final, highly exclusive VIP gift had just been delivered to the main stage for the bride and groom. A courier carried the heavy black box up to the head table. Savannah, assuming it was a priceless piece of diamond jewelry from one of Preston's billionaire investors, clapped her hands in excitement. She grabbed the microphone, calling for everyone's attention, ensuring that all hundreds of high-profile guests, media cameras, and investors were focused entirely on her as she prepared to open the box. As my sister tore away the silk ribbon and lifted the heavy lid, her arrogant, joyful smile instantly froze. Inside the box was not jewelry. Resting at the very top was a sleek, professional corporate folder containing 3 distinct legal documents, along with a high-definition tablet that immediately powered on, displaying a direct, unyielding video message from me. Savannah's hands began to tremble violently as she pulled out the first document. It was a formal, certified emergency eviction and asset foreclosure notice explicitly stating that Vanguard Intelligence had legally seized Grand Ridge Manor due to millions of dollars of defaulted debt, and that the entire event was being shut down effective immediately. The second document was an official corporate audit detailing Preston's massive embezzlement fraud, complete with state banking stamps showing that his personal and corporate accounts had been completely frozen by federal investigators just 30 minutes prior. The third item was a copy of the text detailing the 5 conditions they had tried to force upon me, with a massive, bold red stamp across the front that read, "Conditions rejected. The price of disrespect is total liquidation." As Savannah's eyes raced across the legal papers, realizing that her billionaire husband was a completely broke criminal and that they were currently trespassing on my property, a raw, high-pitched scream of absolute terror ripped from her throat. She dropped the papers, her face turning a sickly pale white as she began to hyperventilate, stumbling backward right into her wedding cake. The entire grand ballroom went completely dead silent. The legal folders fell to the floor, and several powerful investors rushed forward, picking up the documents and reading the embezzlement records out loud. Within seconds, a wave of absolute chaos, shouting, and high society panic exploded through the crowd. At that exact moment, the heavy oak doors of the ballroom were thrown open. A team of uniformed corporate security guards, accompanied by local law enforcement officers, marched directly into the reception. The lead officer walked straight up to the head table, pulled out a set of handcuffs, and arrested Preston Vance for corporate fraud and embezzlement right in front of his entire family, his investors, and the media cameras. My mother, Victoria, began screaming hysterically, grabbing the officer's arm and demanding to know who was behind this public destruction of her family's name. The lead security guard calmly stepped forward, pointed to the corporate logo of Vanguard Intelligence flashing on the tablet inside the black box, and spoke into the microphone for the entire room to hear. He announced coldly that the estate and all assets inside were now the legal property of Alicia Gibson, and that the owner had ordered the immediate evacuation of the premises. They were given exactly 10 minutes to clear the ballroom before being arrested for criminal trespassing. The social and financial fallout over the next month was a masterpiece in poetic justice. Because the embezzlement fraud was exposed so publicly, Preston's family business completely collapsed into bankruptcy within a week, and he was sentenced to a lengthy federal prison term. My mother and sister were left with absolute, permanent public embarrassment among their elite friends, their reputation completely destroyed beyond repair. Because my mother had foolishly invested her own life savings into Preston's fake business ventures to secure her social standing, she lost every single dollar. Within 30 days, they were forced to sell their luxury assets, pack up their designer clothes, and move into a cramped, outdated apartment in a rundown suburban neighborhood, finally experiencing the harsh reality of the struggle they had spent years mocking me for. Savannah was left with nothing but a broken engagement, massive debts, and the crushing realization that her quiet sister held the keys to the world she had desperately tried to conquer. Meanwhile, I relaxed on the beautiful beaches of Malibu, completely surrounded by real, honest friends and global business partners who valued my intelligence, my kindness, and my character rather than a fake image of wealth. Building a truly successful and happy life requires you to understand a very deep, unyielding human truth. Never allow the people who depend on your quiet strength to treat you like an expendable asset. The bond of family is a sacred connection that must be continuously earned through mutual respect, gratitude, and unconditional love. It is never a free license for emotional abuse, manipulation, or toxic entitlement. When people try to give you humiliating conditions just to be a part of their lives, do not waste your precious time crying, screaming, or begging for a seat at their table. Simply step back, withdraw your grace,
and let them experience the cold, devastating weight of the gravity they forgot existed. Build your empire in absolute silence, fiercely guard your personal boundaries, and never look back at the bridge you had to burn to save your own life.